was sort of harking back to the good old days when people used to actually debate 24/7, and there was always
that was great.
Well, that was what the sort of nostalgia that you spoke of it with was what made me think. Well, yeah, I must admit I enjoyed those days. The thing that I didn't enjoy was the lack of any decent moderation. But it's based on an average. Isn't it based on an average, Paul? Isn't it based on an average?
1, 0,
Hold on.
3,
Are we not
0.
going to adjust that part of the calculation, Paul? I thought it was based on an average. Nice day. This is the point you came in and started to quiz me with your little thumbnails.
Are you just going to sit there and talk over me so that I
because you're
can't
really triggered and
explain
it's
it,
funny.
Nathan?
The audience loves it. The audience loves it, Paul. You don't get it, do you? You're really triggered. You're really angry. And every time you react the way you do and shout, the audience gets more appreciation from the audience. They like it. So yeah, I'll keep doing it because you're annoyed. So if it wasn't for the super chats, I probably wouldn't be doing the show. So I'm very grateful to the super chat.
And Matt, what makes
it's not strictly true because there were shows that were reasonably well moderated, but on the whole, they weren't. Don't laugh, Mark. You don't understand. You're too stupid to get this.
What are you scared of?
I'm not scared of anything. Certainly not scared of you, you little prick. Tell me what it is that he says that destroys our argument. Otherwise, we'll kick you out. Right, so it is further around the curve, you stupid idiot. My question is phrased very carefully. This stuff is further around the curve, Rumpus, you blithering idiot. Try and pay attention to the question. Do you understand the question, Rumpus? Because it seems to me like you're an idiot that has just obfuscated my question and deliberately answered incorrectly. Keep your mouth shut till you understand what's going on, you blithering idiots. You don't understand anything. You just confessed that you didn't understand what was going on because you came late to the conversation. So you're clearly a moron. You clearly don't understand anything that's going on. What the hell are you doing here? We've got Sly Sparkane who doesn't understand his own model, doesn't understand that the entire island's a bloody mirage, and we've got you coming around saying, no, it's not going further around the curve. Oh, actually it is going further around the curve. I've just come late to the conversation because I'm an idiot. These days we've got Dread, and you could probably name a longer list than I could, but there's people that are, let me put this kindly, too biased. For all the people who are saying, oh, Nathan's biased, it's like, well, no, I can't help but be biased. I am biased.
Hi YouTube, I'm back once again with a closer look at the Flat Earth daily comedy drama, commonly known as the Flat Earth Debate, and this time at its host, the dumb bald of Flat Earth, Nathan Oakley. Now, as we have just seen, Nathan started the debates with good intentions. His aim to provide a platform for fair and reasoned discussions, an ideal which he managed to maintain for the first month or so. Presumably the steady flow of facts and reasoned arguments became too much for Nathan, because in debate 76, with the introduction of what became known temporarily as
the best flat earth evidence I've seen to date,
he entered the fray with a Flat Earth old favourite, expressed in the style of an absurdly entitled millennial parrot.
One more time, Anthony, just one more time.
2.07 miles, which turns out to be 10,900 feet.
Over 2 miles of curvature should be obscuring our view.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
John, I just want to clarify, why aren't we seeing massive amounts of curvature?
We can see 150 miles, Nathan.
Yeah, why aren't we seeing any curvature should be the question we're asking. Why isn't there no curvature there, Mark? Why isn't there curve? Where's the curvature? Where's the curvature?
If you stand on the beach...
So where is the curvature? Where's the curvature, Mark?
Show me this curvature.
Where's the curvature? Where's the curve? Where's the curvature, Mark? Where's the curvature? Where's the curvature? Where is the curvature?
Well, we're talking about a couple of miles of missing curve. What about where the curvature is, Mark? Let's worry about that. Where's the curve? I'm more concerned with why not a single globe head on the panel yet is to address the missing 2 miles of curvature. 200 metres of missing curvature. Where is that curvature, Paul? 200 metres of missing curve. Please, can you tell me where that curve is? Where's the curvature, Paul? I'd prefer you told us where the curve is, as that's pretty much the point of this debate, Paul. And we're now asking where the 200 metres of missing curvature is on that land. As I say, you've got 2 poisons to pick from. 200 metres of missing curvature on the Isle of Man, or 2 miles of missing curvature on Southern Ireland. You pick your poison. Just pick your poison. 200 metres missing curvature on the Isle of Man, or 2 miles of missing curvature on Southern Ireland. That's the choice. There's no third option here.
Where is the missing 200 metres of curvature? Where's the missing 200 metres, Paul? If you've 200 metres of missing, Paul, minimum. 200 metres of missing curve, Paul. Where is that curve? Where's the curve? Where's the curvature? 200 metres. Where the 200 metres of missing curvature is. We have a very specific question on the table, Paul. Where is the 200 metres of missing curvature? Maybe Lou would like to tell us where the 200 metres of missing curvature is. Where is the 200 metres of missing curvature? What about the 200 metres of missing curvature, Paul? Where's the 200 metres of missing curvature? Can anybody explain where the 200 metres of missing curvature is or not? 200 metres! Is accounting for the 200 metres of missing curvature, Lou, or not? Clearly somebody doesn't like the fact there's 200 metres of missing curvature. What a shame. There is. Regardless of which way you dice it, we're either looking at 2 miles or 200 metres of missing curvature. So now tell us why there's 200 metres of missing curvature. So let's lower your volume and give it to the audience again. It's either the tip of the Isle of Man or Ireland. If it's the tip of the Isle of Man, we are missing 200 metres of curvature. Or if it's Ireland, we're missing 2 miles. Right, so where's the 200 metres of missing curvature, Paul? Where's the 2 miles of missing curvature then? 200 metres of missing curvature. So what we can do is now, if it is Ireland, we are missing 2 miles of curvature. If we are seeing the Isle of Man, we are missing 200 metres of curvature.
I'll just summarise it for the audience again, just so they get it. There's either 2 choices. One is we are seeing Ireland with 2 miles of missing curvature, or 2, we are seeing the tip of the Isle of Man with 200 metres minimum of missing curvature. Those are your 2 choices. If you're saying it's the Isle of Man, Paul, then where's the 200 metres of curvature?
Next, a little self-indulgence. In debate 77, I identified Mackold Head Lighthouse for the first time and pointed out that the 200-foot cliff it stands upon wasn't visible. In an effort to avoid having to explain this, Ranty makes the incorrect assertion that I have misidentified the lighthouse, and Nathan needs no further confirmation.
Ranty has just suggested that Jeremy's got his identification of the lighthouse incorrect.
Can I ask a question?
Apparently, Rumpus.
They don't like
Lighthouse.
to hear it
It's
anymore.
not the lighthouse.
I'm going to make a point that will make
It's
everything
not the
clear.
lighthouse.
No, you can't, Rumpus.
I've got a
It's not
question
the
to make
light-
everything clear to everybody.
Oh well.
Would I present and just show you,
You are
where
presenting.
Moorcold Lighthouse is? Can you let me know when I'm presenting,
You are.
please, Nathan?
Yeah, you
Right,
are.
okay, so here we are on Google Earth, and here we have Moorcold Lighthouse on this peninsula here, whereas the entirety of the image that we are looking at is from this mountain range here all the way over here to
So
there.
Jeremy's a moron.
So from here to here is where we have the entirety of the
first thing
Isle
I
of Man
noticed in your
looking film
photo
in.
was that
and he
your
says
island
this is
was
Moorcold
floating in the
Lighthouse,
air.
which is
Still in the
completely
chat,
yes, not even in the frame.
You did notice that
But this is a
yesterday,
spurious
if I
distraction
remember right.
technique by Jem Panda,
is a
who's
distraction.
misidentified
Well
the
done,
lighthouse.
Nope,
Well
that's
done,
Mr.
Jeremy.
Grimm. Mr. Grimm just puts you down like that. Mr. Grimm.
Well done, Jeremy. This is the slowest clap ever for Jem Panda.
Jeremy failed.
He just destroyed you with a lighthouse. Are you serious? You just like this is all
Total
trash.
fail. What a waste of time that was. Complete waste of time.
Jeremy pointed out quite well, I thought, that he thinks that this is a particular lighthouse. And I agree. Towards the end of the hangout yesterday, Ranty said that it wasn't because reasons. We've flipped back now to agreeing that it is that. So Jeremy did get the correct lighthouse.
And he has triangulated this using the main feature that is definitely obvious, which is the lighthouse. It's definitely what we're looking at. And he's got it to within half a degree. You know, he's got it to phenomenal accuracy. So for you to say, no, you don't know what that piece of land is, we don't know what that piece of land is.
Here is another example.
And then the one on far left, the white one far left, is Douglas.
That one's Douglas, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably maybe about maybe a
Not
bit less
looking
than
good,
a
boys.
there.
Not looking good.
Yeah.
Not looking good.
But don't forget, though.
I think it looks like there's about a
looking
fifth.
good.
I
Ranty,
think it looks like there's about a fifth of the Isle of Man to the left of it.
You really
Ranty,
want me to
can you show
believe
the
that beyond that
elevation of the land
left-hand
that's
white
beyond-
line there is a fifth of the island? Just bring it back up. Sorry,
Something like that, yeah. Not far.
Ranty,
Alright.
can you just bring up Google Earth one more time, please? Sorry.
So we
Yeah.
clearly
So hold
smashed
on.
it
Beyond,
and claimed
let's
that
just
it
get
was
the
no
audience to be
land
clear
off
about
the-
what Jem's saying.
Oh.
Beyond the far left white line,
Hold on a minute.
there is
Hold on. It's the important thing is, we are at the right angle here as well, aren't we?
Yeah.
beyond
All
that
these
white
lines are going
line.
in the
Jem
right
is proposing that 1/5 of the island.
Yep. I'd say
Okay,
about that.
fair
or
enough.
something like that.
It's around about just about a fifth. was a pretty good guess,
look at
actually,
that.
to be fair.
Well, look at that. We've gone from no land to a fifth of the island's land. Wow.
Yeah, but it's Mark. It's all 40 feet.
Wow.
It's all between 30 and 70 feet.
So
It don't make no difference, does it? You claimed there was no land after it, and now we've just found there's a fifth of the island after it.
Didn't we already establish it was 1/5?
No.
No, I don't think we did either.
This deceitful flip-flopping is to become Nathan's trademark as he becomes fully committed to the belief that Sleeping Warrior has photographed the coast of Ireland from St Bees in England. More of that after this.
Now that's what I call stupid. All your favourite idiotic claims about the Isle of Man that was subsequently dropped on one fabulous album including the UK and US chart topper. Google Earth is bending the flat Earth around the ball.
Sorry, Owen. I really want this point to be hammered home. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is critically important. Google definitely don't want you to see this, but when we come to Google Earth, it'll get you to descend into madness to try and figure out where stuff is. Because as you can see, these lines fan the stuff out, so it's wrapped around a ball.
Now that's what I call stupid, featuring top pub tracks from around the British Isles. We can see 3 chimneys in Ireland, and that's definitely Scotland.
But I'm going to make the argument now that this little hump that's here is totally, utterly, and 100% consistent with the tip of Scotland.
Right, that'll do. Stop. I'll just circle it with my mouse because it's nice and clear.
There we go. Look at that.
So this is the landmark, and it's on 2 different videos in exactly the same place on both of the videos. So it's definitely in the same place. It's not a boat moving. So there it is. I'm going to draw my mouse from top to bottom.
Just to clarify why it was a little bit clearer on that particular image was because Anthony went higher in the third image, the third video that hasn't been released yet. He went to the top of the hill, and that's why he was able to see this tower in the background much clearer.
Now it does line up with Kilbrook Power Station. It does line up with the 2 humps that I showed you of land that appears to be Scotland. That can't be coincidence because it is evidence and it is in the picture.
This year's Christmas #1. We only used the drop value on the curve calculator.
32 miles. Viewer height, we'll put it at the 52. The drop is the only value that we're interested in now. It used to be the case that we were interested in this refracted hidden, but nobody had ever challenged it. Me, nobody. No one that I know challenged it.
A special guest duet from Patty Steer and Chris Monk.
I want to bring Chris in just to ask him how sure he is that the modeling that he's done is... How certain are you that we can see Ireland when we see both models?
Well, I'm sure within a foot, basically. It's when I modeled and laid out the lighthouses and like all the lighthouses, Mockholden, Lagness, everything, I triangulated them using trigonometry to a foot. Their elevations are correct, so it's within a foot.
Now that's what I call stupid, featuring the double A side. The AE map lies at the heart of WGS 84, and my welder is my surveyor.
The flattening factor F. For the WGS 1984. The disc that is 33 miles in kilometre, and it's an AE projection. This is the world of the WGS 84. This is your world that you're using. It's not a sphere, it's not a globe. This is what it looks like. That is the WGS 84. That's what it looks like. This is it. This is the World Geodetic Survey 1984. This is what it looks like. This is the stars. This is the celestial sphere. This is not where we live. This is not the bit that we live on. This is the bit we live on.
So all that time that Tim's been telling us about the celestial sphere, he's kind of got his interpretation wrong then, right?
Yeah. Basically, you guys, your geodetic survey that you all think is representative of a globe model isn't in any way, shape or form representative of a globe. Sorry. It's a flattened out disc with a celestial sphere around it. That's what you're using. That's what the Ordnance Surveys use. So what I'm trying to point out to the audience is a veteran surveyor who has used this tool has given me his information. I have got a surveyor who has told me after many years of using it that he flattens it to a flat disc, and then he uses it to build things and has done for many years.
and this year's top-selling single, We Can See Ireland from England 150 miles away.
Yeah, it's very cool stuff. This is the bit that people need to focus on should they be interested in the debates or using the evidence if they want to debate somebody else. This is the main bit, and as Anthony called it, a diamond. Well, the reason it's a diamond is because without that you couldn't prove that it's Ireland behind. So the reason it's a 145-mile observation is because of this 51-mile observation of the lighthouse, because it's the last tip, it's the very last thing, it's on the very furthest edge that's visible from the line of sight. So it's the last thing of the Isle of Man, that lighthouse, and it's pretty much exactly the same height as Anthony's standing at. So you're seeing down to the beach. It's perfectly flat. There's no other word that can describe it.
Now that's what I call stupid. Get your copy now.
Every one of these claims will eventually be dropped, but before that, Nathan leads his team on a grand tour of Flat Earth hangouts to announce to the world that Ireland can be seen from England and therefore the Earth is flat. Despite being triangulated by Ranty and plotted to within a foot of accuracy by Chris Monk, none of our team noticed that the diamond evidence, a supposed image of Langness Lighthouse, was in the wrong place, had the wrong orientation, was the wrong colour, and was 3 times the size that it should have been. But anyone who attempts to point out where Nathan and team are wrong is abused, mocked and slandered.
That doesn't change that he perpetuates lies. We don't live on a spinning globe, and that's the kind of nonsense that he peddles. He's a merchant of nonsense. You're delusional. You think it's a mirage, Paul? You're deluded. You're a fool. You think it's a mirage. Just for the audience's benefit, we're just talking about one of the ball earth components that has lied through his back teeth. Keep your mouth shut till you understand what's going on.
I understand perfectly what's going on.
No, you don't. You just gave the wrong answer, you blithering idiots. You don't understand anything. You just confessed that you didn't understand what was going on because you came late to the conversation. So you're clearly a moron. You clearly don't understand anything that's going on. What the hell are you doing here? We've got Sly Sparkane who doesn't understand his own model, doesn't understand that the entire island's a bloody mirage, and we've got you coming around saying, no, it's not going further around the curve. Oh, actually, it is going further around the curve. I've just come late to the conversation because I'm an idiot. You trigger me, Mark, because you're a moron, because you don't get it. You, Lou and Alex all annoy me because you're all idiots. Too slow to understand the problem.
Eventually, somehow the message does get through, and 3 weeks after his grand tour, Nathan is back on Patty's show to eat the smallest slice of humble pie ever made. On their first appearance, 90 minutes were devoted to telling the Flat Earth community all about
the best Flat Earth evidence I've seen to date.
This time around, the subject is covered a little quicker.
Now, I'll concede this again. I've eaten enough humble pie in the last week to not mind doing it again. But in terms of that, I declared uncertainly and unequivocally it's Ireland, admittedly, and then put it up for debate and asked people to debunk the claim that we were making. But upon it being debunked, I had to eat humble pie and say, no, I was wrong.
Yep. That was Nathan's retraction. No need for him to be humble here. Apparently he already did that somewhere else. Also, he felt the need to add this.
You've all seen it already in terms of how the globe model fails and why it fails. That won't change. The globe model is a complete failure when it comes to the Isle of Man. It's not here to speak for himself, but I'm sure Anthony will agree with me. It is literally driven him to the edge of sanity at times. And it's because Google is an absolute joke. It's a joke of an excuse for a representation of our reality. And hopefully Branty will go through that as well in terms of some of the misidentifications we've made along the way. And indeed, the misidentifications a lot of the people on the other side of the argument are still having, because it's nigh on impossible to actually match up this stuff with the tools that we're given. And it's because we live in a world of deception.
Flat Earthers need not despair though, because even though
the best Flat Earth evidence I've seen to date
turned out to be just more Anthony Riley bullshit backed up by the idiotic assertions of Ranty, Nathan softens the blow with a promise of the one thing that has eluded the Flat Earth community since day one.
I've been trying for a while to get all 4 of the QED team back together to do a new presentation. something quite significant. And Chris has said, look, don't build it up too much, don't want the pressure, but by the same token, it is a very, very important thing that he's going to be presenting, which will be a true representation of our reality, a flat earth model. But what we haven't had an opportunity so far to do is say, well, here is how the world actually works. This is how your vision works. This is what you see of the Isle of Man. And Chris was doing it with the trig today, and it was just blowing my mind in terms of what he was doing. And he's lining up the elevations on these mountains and then calculating how high they should be based on the angle he's got the camera angled up to match the image, and then doing the trig on it, and obviously coming back with inch perfect measurements. You could literally use this thing as a surveying tool. It's that good. But just mind-blowing in terms of how accurate it is and how well it represents our world, because it is a representation of our world. And as I said, there's no apologies needed for it. We live in a world of deception, and they don't want you to know the reality that you're faced with. They don't want you to know how you see things and why you see things. And it is incredibly difficult. It's taken a huge amount of time, a lot of debate, a lot of argument, but the end result is a flat earth model. And the amount of times I hear people say, we haven't got a model. Well, we have now. Yeah, it's a small one, but it's something we can literally put the label flat earth model. And it's not just a map with suns going around it. It's a working model. Chris, I've asked Chris this. I'm happy to say this. At the end, once it's presented, Chris will zip up the blend file. There you go. He's putting his reputation on the line for it. But to date, you find me another working flat earth model out there. I don't know of any.
Everything that guy just says is bullshit. Thank you.
Realizing temporarily that Sleeping Warrior can't be trusted to honestly state where he is standing, that Ranty can't be trusted to correctly identify a single landmark despite triangulating them, that Chris Monk can't be trusted to make a 3D model of anything, and that Arwin the Wizard can always be trusted to spew only nonsensical gibberish at every available opportunity, Nathan tries to shore up his team of badly injured second-rate reserves with a new signing. The great news for us all here is that I can now confirm that if God exists, he has a great sense of humour, because the answer to Nathan's prayers arrives in the form of quantum eraser.
What is your independent variable, sir?
Quantum Eraser's single argument is always read from his script, although he and Nathan claim this is not a script, but is citations. And yet a good proportion of it is just QE's opinion, with colour-coded stage directions so he knows which phrases to screech more loudly. Quantum Eraser's strategy is to manufacture his own definition of science, which he supports with various cherry-picked quotes from university websites. This creative approach to intellectual dishonesty allows Quantum to pretend that any scientific principle which doesn't comply with the Bronze Age book that he worships can be dismissed as pseudoscience. In fact, he completely rejects entire fields of science, including astronomy and geology, on this basis. The first actual citation he uses is claimed to come from
the University of Rochester Physics Department,
when it actually comes from the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Rochester. In a longer version of this presentation, Quantum also cites this: The Nature of Science and the Scientific Method, from the Geological Society of America. So his reputable sources for defining science are from what he considers to be disreputable pseudoscience, or in his own words,
pseudoscience pretender clowns.
Quantum claims that what is and what isn't science is defined only by his very strict definition of the scientific method.
The scientific method. So bare bones it has 4 steps.
And yet from the Geological Society paper he cites, it says this: Research clearly shows most students and teachers do not adequately understand the nature of science. For example, most teachers and students believe that all scientific investigations adhere to an identical set of steps known as the scientific method. Thus, science is seen as a pathway to study phenomena in the world based upon reproducibly testable and verifiable evidence. This pathway may take different forms. In fact, creative flexibility is essential to scientific thinking. So there is no single method that all scientists use, but each must ultimately have a conclusion that is testable and falsifiable. Otherwise, it is not science. The scientific method, in actuality, isn't a set sequence of procedures that must happen, although it is sometimes presented as such. Some descriptions actually list and number 3 to 14 procedural steps. No matter how many steps it has or what they cover, the scientific method does contain elements that are applicable to most experimental sciences, such as physics and chemistry, and is taught to students to aid their understanding of science. There has been debate about how to define science since the term was first used. No one, however, defines it in the way that Quantum Eraser and Nathan do. The Science Council of Great Britain recently spent a year working out a new definition of science. It may be, they claim, the first official definition of science ever published. Here is what they came up with. Science is the pursuit of knowledge and understanding of the natural and social world following a systematic methodology based on evidence. The University of Georgia describes science like this. Science is the concerted human effort to understand, or to understand better, the history of the natural world and how the natural world works, with observable physical evidence as the basis of that understanding. It is done through observation of natural phenomena and or through experimentation that tries to simulate the natural processes under controlled conditions. Consider some examples. An ecologist observing the territorial behaviours of bluebirds and a geologist examining the distribution of fossils in an outcrop are both scientists making observations in order to find patterns in natural phenomena. An astrophysicist photographing distant galaxies and a climatologist sifting data from weather balloons similarly are also scientists making observations. These examples are observational science, but there is also experimental science. A chemist observing the rates of one chemical reaction at a variety of temperatures, and a nuclear physicist recording the results of bombardment of a particular kind of matter with neutrons are both scientists performing experiments to see what consistent patterns emerge. A biologist observing the reaction of a particular tissue to various stimulants is likewise experimenting to find patterns of behaviour. The critical commonality is that all these people are making and recording observations of nature or of simulations of nature in order to learn more about how nature in the broadest sense works. A blog article from Scientific American entitled Biology and the Scientific Method explains science this way. The hypothetico-deductive method, while arguably the most powerful part of the scientific method, is not the only one. There is a continuum of scientific methods as depicted here. Collecting information about all the species of birds and salamanders in the mountains of North Carolina is not a test of hypothesis, and is not manipulative, and is not experimental. Yet it is certainly science. It provides important information about the natural world. If patterns emerge from such a survey and prompt new ideas about species distribution, this can then be tested in a more experimental fashion. The Human Genome Project is highly manipulative, yet it is not hypothesis testing. Nobody predicted that we would find anything but the 4 nucleotides known to make up DNA. We had no predictions as to what the sequence will be and what it would all mean. Once the work was done, we could use the Human Genome Project as a tool for testing new hypotheses. For example, how many genes do we have? How they are related to the genes of chimps? How diverse are particular gene sequences in human population as a whole? Paleontology is somewhere in the middle. It is somewhat manipulative. It takes hard work and a lot of people to do it, and it is somewhat hypothesis testing. Paleontologists do not dig randomly, they dig in particular places on the planet, in particular layers of the sediment, looking for fossils of particular kinds of organisms. For instance, a group recently did an excavation in a particular bed of late Devonian layer, looking specifically for a fossil of an early tetrapod, i.e. a transitional organism between fully aquatic and fully terrestrial mode of life. They discovered exactly that, a fossil named Tiktaalik, whose fins were better suited for walking on land than that of fishes, like mudskippers, catfish and lungfish, yet not completely evolved for land use as in amphibians. Sometimes nature provides an experiment that tests a hypothesis. For instance, a biogeographical model of island succession was tested when the volcano Krakatoa erupted and eliminated all life from the island. The scientists went there and observed which organisms flew in from the mainland, in which order, and how the ecosystem passed through several stages until it reached its mature stage, thus confirming and somewhat modifying their hypotheses. So we can see that Quantum's definition of science is entirely one of his own making. He is not citing the actual views of the sources that he uses, and there are many other reputable sources which provide more comprehensive and considerably more reasonable definitions. In the English language, definitions are never prescribed. They reflect reality and usage, and so the simple truth is that when every university puts astronomy and geology in the Department of Science, when every scientist calls these things science, then ultimately that's all that's required for these things to be science. This isn't something that Quantum Eraser and Nathan get to decide. After laying out his definition, Quantum Eraser makes some additional claims which I think should be addressed. Firstly, he says that science can prove things, and so he is justified in demanding scientific proof. Again, his own sources refute him. Here is what his hero, Richard Feynman, has to say about this.
For instance, I had a conversation about flying saucers some years ago with laymen. Because I'm scientific, I know all about flying saucers. So I said, I don't think there are flying saucers. So my antagonist said, is it impossible that there are flying saucers? Can you prove that it's impossible? I said, no, I can't prove it's impossible. It's just very unlikely. That, they say, you are very unscientific. If you can't prove it impossible, then how can you say it's likely, that it's unlikely? So that's the way, that is scientific. It is scientific only to say what's more likely and less likely, and not to be proving all the time possible and impossible.
Quantum then goes on to say this.
Now, question. Is the flat Earth or a sphere, or any other shape for that matter, a cause and effect question, a how-I question, or is it a what-is question? Well, it's a what-is question. Can what-is questions be adjudicated via the scientific method? What we just went over? No, they can't. This isn't science.
And yet he always demands that any challenger provides scientific proof, even though by his definition this is impossible. This is extreme intellectual dishonesty. His aim is simply to tie his opponent in knots as they try and meet his absurd requirements. Similarly, he makes the argument that atmospheric refraction cannot be experimented on and is not scientific, and is a
begging the question fallacy,
because it includes the curvature of the Earth, and r needs to be proven. R being the radius of the Earth as it is annotated on the Metabunk curvature calculator. It's at this point that we can return to Nathan, because like everything that might confirm his bias, Nathan swallows Quantum's nonsense without challenge, and then appoints himself arbiter of all things scientific, using Quantum's argument to demand that opponents provide scientific proof of R, and demanding that they provide a hypothesis, dependent and independent variables.
You retard, you fool. Science is the scientific method. You are a retard. If you think there is more to it than that, science is the scientific method. I don't care what you think the scientific method is. It is science. That is science. Whether you like it is beyond me. I don't care what you like. Science is a method, whether you like it or not. The scientific method is science. The science is the scientific method. That is end of sentence. End of story. It doesn't matter what this retard rumpus says. It is a fact. What's your scientific evidence to back this R value?
It's been peer reviewed.
I don't care! I want your scientific evidence. You're clearly deaf, you complete retard. What is your experiment that has been performed to prove the value of R?
This is totally unnecessary and is simply a feeble and unreasonable means for Nathan to be willfully ignorant. As the previous examples have shown, we can determine valid facts about reality simply by making measurements. When you need to know your shoe size, you simply measure your feet, and as a result you know the factual size of your feet in reality. To try and come up with a scientific hypothesis to determine foot size using Nathan's definition would be entirely absurd and is unnecessary, and yet if you don't, according to Nathan, you cannot know the size of your feet.
Yes, it does.
No, it
the
doesn't,
up
Nathan.
becoming
He's
down
explained that
because
to
of
you.
less curve on a ball is a presuppositional argument
Yes, it
that
is
we
for the
are on
overall
a
bit, but
ball.
not the point I'm
So
making
it
at the
is
moment.
a presuppositional argument that you failed to disclaim to the audience. I'm now doing it for you, Rumpus, whether you like it or not. This is for the commenters who say, "Oh, he's so warm and welcoming," and then he jumps down their throat. You give me a presuppositional argument that we're on a sphere without disclaiming the presupposition. I'm going to do it for you. That's what I'm doing. Don't have to like it.
Presuppositional argument is a term that we hear Nathan use a lot. His claim being that the radius of the Earth has never been scientifically proven, and any attempt to prove it involves first presupposing that there is a globe and is therefore a presuppositional argument. This is not a presuppositional argument. A presuppositional argument is an argument for the existence of God. These days, usually the Christian God, although the argument originated in Islam. It makes the claim that God is the source of logic and reasoning, and so to reason that God does not exist is contradictory. There are many examples of presuppositional argumentation here on YouTube. Eric Hovind, son of Kent, and Cy ten Bruggencate being the more notorious of its current proponents.
You see, I'm not an evidentialist. I don't give up my authority and argue evidence with the unbeliever. I'm a presuppositionalist. I challenge their presuppositions. See, my presupposition is that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. All the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are hidden in Christ.
So a spherical Earth is not, and never has been, a presupposition. Even if we go back to Eratosthenes and his sticks, Eratosthenes could be said to have known the Earth was spherical before he made his measurements, as long as he had reliable justification for the belief. This could be watching ships disappear over the horizon, or observing the position of stars according to latitude. These justify the belief and indicate it comports with reality, making it a justified true belief, and consequently it can only be considered knowledge and never a presupposition. Since Eratosthenes, many measurements have taken place using a variety of methods, from earthbound arc measurements using star sightings to space shuttle-based radar scanning. To suggest that the radius of the Earth is just some nebulous number plucked from the air that no one has any justification to believe is just plain nonsense. The final point I want to make is to ask you, dear viewer, to consider this. Of all the things that you know, how many are the result of scientific experiment of any kind, let alone one that meets Nathan's definition? I would suggest that for most of us, it is virtually none. What was the scientific experiment that brought you to the realization that Tahiti exists? What is your independent variable for spaghetti bolognese? Provide your hypothesis for daffodils. We believe things to be true and commit them to knowledge because of the evidence that supports this. In the case of daffodils, you can probably go with your own personal experience. When it comes to Tahiti, you maybe have to go with the accounts from sources that you consider to be reputable. No science is required for almost everything you consider knowledge, and so when Nathan demands this, it is simply absurd intellectual dishonesty. The Flat Earth debate has demonstrated yet again that any version of the Flat Earth idea cannot be reasonably defended in conversation. Despite his initial good intentions, Nathan very quickly followed the path of the other Flat Earthers who have claimed to be running open hangouts that he was critical of. The pattern in every case has been the same. A total avoidance of any burden of proof, a channel host who hides behind his mute button, bullying, slandering, mocking and abusing any guest who challenges the Flat Earth idea, with this behaviour enabled and cheered on by a gang of feeble sycophant regulars. And perhaps the most offensive thing in each and every case, a constant spew of arrogant ignorance. If you are not a Flat Earther, I implore you not to keep enabling Nathan's abusive behaviour by engaging him or his gang in the debate hangout. Nathan has shown over and over again that he only wants to mock and abuse and force you to play his dishonest game of producing his impossible and illogical version of scientific proof. He has no interest in truth. His goals are only to feed his ego and his bank account. Every time someone engages him is an opportunity for him to be abusive, and every time he is abusive, Flat Earthers give him money. Finally, to my Flat Earth audience, if I ever had one, I don't suppose many or even any of you have made it this far. Here is a reminder of what you're actually paying for. Dishonest evidence presented as genuine, lazy, sloppy or non-existent research presented as labour-intensive and accurate, the resulting plethora of errors presented to your community as the best Flat Earth evidence to date. And when this nonsense failed, arrogant, overblown claims about a working Flat Earth model, a desperate avoidance of the facts of our reality, which is reliant upon the ignorant proclamations of an obnoxious young Earth creationist who devised the argument to prove the existence of the Christian God that he clearly has no faith in. Slanderous, abusive behaviour and censorship of challenges. Ignorant, incorrect bullshit spewed out daily with no hope of improvement because of the foolish arrogance of its proponents. Good luck with that, flatties. Thanks for watching. Please rate, comment and subscribe.